We have been in Knysna a whole year this month. We didn't plan on staying in Knysna this long, but it's been fantastic, and we met a lovely bunch of people. And one of them, we felt we wanted to share the story. It's just a really fun story. This is what this week's episode is all about. So make sure to watch the whole thing. There's a nice link with this cruiser and his boat to Knysna, so we thought it's very relevant. And then make sure to join next week as we say our goodbyes and share what our next stop and our next plan is. So over to the story and see you next week.
Well, I'm Fenton Hamlin, and I'm from Bay of Islands in New Zealand, and I had a farm at the Tangaroa in between, that's north of New Zealand, sheep and cattle farm. But my marriage went bad and my wife left, and I had to pay her out a lot of money, and the farm was really I couldn't afford to keep on farming. But I had a big tree at the back of the farm, and I thought, well, if I'm going to lose the farm, at least I'll keep the tree.
What do you think you're gonna give to them they don't already have? Anyway, there's so many mouths, they're all talking just the same. Get up there behind that thing and you sing to them, it's all the same. Well, where's your voice now, son? Are you defeated so easily? We'll pack your things.
Tell me a little bit more about this specific boat. Why this design, the size, and a little bit more of the technical stuff.
Okay. Well, ever since I was a small boy, I've been wanting to build a real classic type yacht. I built model boats and sailing dinghies and small trailer yachts and all that sort of thing as the years went by. But I always wanted to try and build a really traditional type boat. And I used to look in magazines and write away for study prints and all this sort of stuff. But I still had my farm at that stage. But money was very tight, and there was no way that I could really get a fiberglass hull and finish it off or anything like that. And then I read a story about this couple that had sailed to New Zealand on a boat and from Canada. And there was a photo in the magazine story of this woman sitting about here, working away on a typewriter, and her husband sitting over where you're sitting. And he was having a glass of wine and looking very relaxed, and there's all this beautiful polished brass and varnish. And I thought, well, that looks good. And I told a friend about it the next day, and he said, oh, those guys, yeah, that guy Larry's working for a boat builder down in Auckland now. So I rang up this company and said, look, is Larry Party there? And they said, oh no, he's just bought a property on an island just outside Auckland. So they gave me his phone number. I rang him up and said, could I please come and have a look at your boat? Oh, very welcome, come down. So I had quite a bit smaller yacht at that time, and I sailed down the coast to Kowal and anchored and rowed into their little house right on the water's edge with its own jetty and everything. And as I came in to tie up, Larry was there to greet me, and he said, that's a nice looking dinghy you have there, and his real sort of rich Canadian voice. And they were very welcoming, showed me the boat, and then the minute I stepped on their boat, Taliesin, I thought, wow, this is so different to any yacht that I'd ever been on. It was so solid and everything felt just right. We became friends, and I said, I want to build one of these boats. And he said, well, have you got the time? There's a lot of time to build this sort of boat. Have you got the money? Have you got the skills? Gave me fair warning about all this sort of stuff. I kept saying yes, yes, yes. Went back to my farm, and I thought, okay, I'll just see if I can make one of these frames, because all the frames of this boat are cut out of solid timber, and so I cut a branch off a tree up in my horse paddock and got my chainsaw and trimmed it all up and ended up with a nice curved piece of timber which could, if it was in the right species, could have been a boat frame. So I thought, oh, I can do this. So I got all the plans. So I dropped the tree, a big old kaihikatea tree, about 1 metre in diameter, and had it milled up into boat building size timbers, and basically built the boat from that. So that was a fantastic project. That was about 10 years of work. Dry all the timber first, we stacked it up and let it dry for a couple of years, and then restacked it again in the wool shed. So it dried in there for about another year, and then I did all the lofting for the boat, drawing out the plans full size so I could make the frames and all that sort of thing. So I started building the boat there in the shed, in the wool shed. And I'd been trying to sell my farm for a long time, but it was a bad time for farming and took a long time to sell. Eventually I sold it, and then I had to dismantle what I'd built, which is really just the backbone timbers for the boat. And I bought just a very small block of land up near Kerikeri in the Bay Islands, and moved everything up there and built a shed to build the boat in, and lived in the end of the shed, and really got stuck into building. It's designed by this American guy, Lyle Hess, but he basically copied the old English workboats, fishing boats and pilot cutters and things like that. And so these sort of boats are all built with simple tools. I mean, a modern fiberglass boat, you just about got to have a laboratory to build them in, to cure the chemicals and all this sort of thing. This is very simple. You just built with simple tools, adze and big chisels and drill and that sort of thing. Lots of chisel work. But yeah, I thought it was the sort of boat that I could build, because I used to play around with vintage cars quite a lot and grew up with a motor engineer father, and like tools, like using tools. So I thought, yeah, I can probably have a go at this. And the other thing was that Larry Pardey was just writing his book about details of classic yacht construction, and he gave me the manuscript for the book, which really detailed this particular design. So yeah, it was a fun project, even though it took a long time for me as an amateur.
What was the hardest part of building the boat?
None of it was really easy, but it was all enjoyable. I don't know, I suppose the planking for me, cutting all the planks, because they're not steamed planks, and they're 1.25 inches thick, so quite sort of hard to bend the timbers around. Yeah, but that was okay. There's a lot of bronze in this boat. It's one of the features of the design is that all the frames are attached. There's 24 frames on the length of the boat. Each frame is attached to the keel by a bronze casting, specially cast, we call them floors. And the bolts go down through the keel and also go through the frames fore and aft. There's probably a photo here somewhere. Oh, this photo here shows the floors all set up on the keel timber, these bronze wings, and that's really quite a significant detail of the construction. It's very strong and very long lasting, and yeah, I was able to use Larry Pardey's patterns for those.
And you can be proud of the whole boat, but if you had to pick one thing or a couple of things that you like super chuffed with.
About the design?
How it came out.
Okay. Well, I love lying on our bunk up forward and looking back into the cabin and looking at the curves and the shapes everywhere, and I think, wow, I don't remember building that, but I suppose I must have. So yeah, I love the shape. It's great. And we're really lucky, and not many 30-footers have a permanent double bunk up forward, so that's really nice. But we don't have a shower. That's the compromise.
Right. So what do you use?
Salt in the shower or a bucket of water if you're sailing.
And the name, where does that come from?
Pateke, it's a Maori name, Maori word for a threatened species of duck. in New Zealand, the brown teal. And while I was building the boat, most of the time I was doing part-time work for the National Trust in New Zealand, Queen Elizabeth II National Trust, which was involved in protecting significant landscape features on private land, usually forest remnants, but sometimes habitat for threatened species like brown teal. And I couldn't think of a name. And then I thought, well, maybe the brown teal might suit because it's a threatened species and a bit like the builder and the design. Soon gone. So it became Pateke. That's quite an easy word for on VHF radio, and you Papa Alpha Tango Echo Kilo Echo, and people can write it down okay.
What engine do you have? You know?
Now we have a Beta, which is a Kubota engine, marinized in England. Beautiful little 3-cylinder 25 horsepower engine. It's been absolutely wonderful. The first engine I put in was an old book. It was old when I bought it, probably about 30 years old. And it became a little bit troublesome. So I put in the Beta about 10 years ago.
And where was your first stop?
I did a trip up to Vanuatu, about 800 miles north of New Zealand, with a couple of friends, and then across to Queensland, down the Barrier Reef area, and then back to New Zealand. I left in January 2005. The goal was to go to the Australian Wooden Boat Festival in Tasmania. So that became the goal, to get there.
And you made it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I sailed westward and sailed across the Great Australian Bight, then on up to northwest Australia, out to Cocos Keeling Island, then down across the Indian Ocean to Rodrigues and Mauritius, around the bottom of Madagascar and into Durban, and then down to Knysna. And that was about 14, nearly 15 years ago. So I thought I'd better go and have a look at Japan. Yeah, I was going to go to Japan, work for a while, and then sail across to Canada. But I met Kojima.
Lets you stay right where you are. With a woman like her, a man don't need a bar.
I did okay. We would like to come back over this side of the Indian. So last year, 2018, sailed back across the Indian Ocean to Africa. Came down the coast and back into Knysna. So here we are.
Here you are, and that's how we met.
Yeah.
And there's even more significance with Knysna than your second time here. Your link with the family Thesen.
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky to meet Eric. I mean, I had built the hull of the boat back in New Zealand and laid the deck, the sub-deck, and I was just starting to cut out the timbers for the cabin trunk. I just cut out that front piece there, and I met Eric. A mutual friend of ours brought him around to my shed one day, and I could see he was really interested in the boat. And it's such a humble sort of a guy. I didn't know at that stage his background in wooden boat building, but he is a world-class woodworker and boat builder, a proper shipwright. So I said to him, well, I haven't got any money, Eric. I haven't got much money, but if you can help me for a few months, I'd love to have your help, and I can pay you a little bit anyway. So he did, and he really laid the teak deck, and I helped him. And then he and I worked on building the cabin trunk, boring the big bolt holes and everything that come down through the trunk. And then he made the skylight and this main hatch. He was a fantastic guy. But while we were working together, he said, well, when you finish this boat, you must sail to Africa, you must go to Knysna. And he gave me the names of various people here, old friends of his, like Roger Clancy and Colin Forster and other people, Dorian. So that was a fantastic introduction. So that's really why I came here.
And now you've been here and you really know them well. And he also came out and you sailed with him recently.
Yeah, I get to see him again. I hadn't seen him for 14 years. And we sailed on Pateke and went to the yacht club opening and all this sort of thing. That was really good.
It's making me frisky, that look in her eye. She's warm like whiskey.
People you meet, places you go to. Yeah, sailing is great too. I love sailing, but you know, it's lovely meeting such interesting people as you go around.
And the worst thing about it?
Well, the sacrifices everywhere, I guess. You know, I really haven't had much contact with my grandchildren or my children while I've been away. So yeah, there's always some cost in it. You know, you're not with your parents, you're not with your children, not with your grandchildren or anything. So that's probably the worst thing about it.
After Knysna, what's next?
Hopefully Brazil, then probably through the Panama, but we're thinking possibly about going down around the Horn, but probably Panama, and back across the Pacific. We may even go back to Langkawi, which we like, and spent a long time there. We might make that a base, and then I can fly down to New Zealand, or Kojima can fly up to Japan, and it's quite a nice place to live. So we'll see.